Okay, so thinking of potentially we were saying with Florin, maybe when he gets out here, we'll do some river mount growth scouting for some sea run cutthroat as the chum fry start to wash downstream. So I was thinking a good attempt for that would be this guy here, which you've probably all tried at one point or another. So the materials for this pattern are pretty straightforward. The hook is this guy here. It's a TMC 9394, which is a size 6 with a 4x long shank, and it's a plated hook, so it won't rust in the boxes as much. So we'll get that hook out. I've already bent the barb down with the pliers. Get in there, good and solid. Oh, not quite solid enough. And then the first piece of material that goes on is some relatively wide silver tinsel. And it's going to have a oval silver tinsel rib. And then the remainder of the fly is Bucktail. Yellow over green. It's a Mickey fin combination. And quite frankly, if you were to do it with polar bear, it would probably be a little better to use polar bear because you get more even lengths. But I'll have to stack this stuff and do a little fiddling with it to get the hair length right. So we're going to be hearing a bit of stacker whacking as we do this. Using thread is 6/0 black, and just to keep in my mind not to go too far forward when I start putting, because that's what I need the hair wing at the front. I'm going to start the thread about a quarter way back from the eye of the hook. Just to say when it get finished with the tinfoil body, stop there. Oh, my thread is being ornery. Why are you being ornery? Let's try again. It's like somebody came in and tightened up my bobbin in the process. All right. So the purpose of wrapping the thread down the shank of the hook here is primarily to try and keep the body relatively even as I wrap the tinsel up. So I don't want to start with a big bump of thread at the tag end of the fly. And I'm going to take the thread back to right where the barb used to be. Then we'll take this oval silver tinsel. And because I don't have the nice little magnets on mine that don't adhere to this stainless steel vise, I'm not going to leave the spool attached to where I tie in the rib. So there's the rib. Bring it around to the far side of the hook, and then I'm going to snip off enough to wrap the rib. Then we'll take the tinsel, which is this is Uni Mylar number 14, and this is the two colored stuff. It's got gold on one side and the silver on the other. So when I tie it in, I'm going to tie it in with the gold side of the tinsel facing me. So the first wrap will flip it over, and then from then on, the silver will be on the outside. So I'll just tie that in right at the back and put it in a position so that it will flip over as soon as I turn it. want to make sure that that gold goes on the inside. Then I'll bring my thread up out of the way. And I'll just put a half hitch here so that I can keep my thread out of the way while I try and wrap this tinsel. So we'll make the first wrap, if I do this right. And then I will wrap in touching turns. And this is, you could probably even do with a wider tinsel than the one that I've got. And because I want it to very slight overlap so that I don't leave any black thread showing through. And then we'll just wrap that up the shank. So we're trying to make a relatively smooth tinsel body here. And when I get to where that sort of 1/4 point up the shank is, I'll hold the tinsel up and bring my thread back and tie it down. Tie it off. And then I'll throw that half hitch again, because I'm going to use the bobbin rest process to try and get nice even wraps on this ribbing. And I'm going to counter wrap it opposite direction and try to get that rib evenly spaced all the way up the shank of the hook. And then when we get to that 1/4 mark, I will take my thread and tie it off. So good. So now you'll be able to see that I've got that nice rib on the silver tinsel. It stands out. It gives that little reflection. Now at this point, I'm going to build a little bit of a lump of thread, because what I want to do is try and keep that the next bit, which is the bucktail, off of the hook shank a bit. So I'll build a little bit of bump thread, bring my thread in front of that. We start with yellow bucktail, and I don't need real long stuff, but the way this bucktail comes, it doesn't, this particular, these little pieces, the lengths tend to be a little longer than you'd normally want, but that's the way it works. You can buy 3 or 4 of these in a package from Robinson's for about $4 a package. So now the trick with any of these kinky fibers, be it bucktail or polar bear, there's a little bit of brown in there I got rid of. So the first thing I'm going to do is stack this stuff. So I need to take the fuzz out of the bottom. So I'll hold them by the tip and take a fine comb, and I'm going to comb the fuzz out of the bottom. Just run the comb through both sides and remove the real long parts. From the bottom. Now I'll get my hair stacker, this is a big one. To do these kinky fibers, you need a pretty good sized hair stacker. And I will stick those in the hair stacker. And then don't mind the noise. I'm going to along pretty good. And there's a few really long ones I want to get out of here. So I start out with a fair number of these, and then it thins the clump down quite a bit. There's still a few really stragglers there. So then I got to measure this against the shank of the hook. And I want it to extend maybe the tinsel length of the shank behind where the tinsel ends. And I'm just going to let it stick out about that far behind the shank of the hook. And I will pinch it with my thumb and forefinger where the lump of thread is there. Take my scissors and cut the ends off at a bit of an angle, with the bottom of the clump being a little longer than the top of the clump. And I'll hold it down at that angle, just in front of where that lump of thread is. And make a loop over top, in between my fingers, down the far side. Pinch like heck when I attach that on, so that the best of my ability, I can keep the clump of hair on top of the hook shank. Bring it back. Now, just to make sure that that hair sticks up a little bit, I'll come in behind it with the thread, pull forward, and wrap in front, and come behind again. Bring the thread up against the bunch of hair and leave it there. And there's your first tail. It sticks up a little bit, and putting that thread wrap in behind, if you do it right, helps it stick up from the shank of the hook a bit. Then we want the red stuff. And I don't need, again, a whole lot of the red. It's just to add kind of a streak of red hair in the middle. We'll do the same thing as we did with the yellow. I'm going to trim it off as close as I can to the hide. Grab the tips, pull the loose stuff out of the bottom again, and get over my bin here. I had the vacuum in here yesterday because I had so much of this bucktail on the floor. I've had to do a little cleanup with the vacuum, even though I have a bin down there to catch it. So when I get about the clump size that I want, I'll take out a couple of these real long stragglers because I don't want to let it stack very well. And then I'll put it in my stacker. Long one's getting away. Put them down there. Just give it a little tap down. Then make a noise. Does not a bad job of stacking. It's still a little bit uneven at the end. If you're doing regular deer belly hair, it goes nice and straight, but with this really kinky stuff, it doesn't quite do that. So I'm going to measure that just a hair shorter than the first clump. Get my fingers in the same place. Scissors, and I'm going to cut that angle again. And hold it down over the hook shank with my thread almost at the very back end of the previous clump. And hold it down at that angle and make a loop over the top. Pinch against the hook shank really good so that it doesn't wrap around, and tie down that hair. And there's your red. And I'm just going to double check, make sure that it hasn't rolled around the shank. and make sure it's right on top on both sides. Got a nice little ramp there now. Bring my thread back to that, and we'll do the same thing again with the yellow. So I'll take a chunk of yellow, about the same size as the first one. Cut that off right at the bottom of the leather. Pull out the really long fibers. Once again, use my comb and move out as much fuzz as I can. That was a bit fuzzy on that one. And put this back in the stacker. And again, we'll make some noise. Just touch it down in there, and then we'll so that's not bad. And this, because this is really crinkly hair, it doesn't stack perfectly. That's about the size of clump that I want. Maybe just a couple less in here. And measure that for about the same, maybe just a hair less length than what the red is. And I'll measure it, grab it with my fingers in the spot, cut it at that slight angle again. Set it down on top of the hook, right where the thread is, and hold it at that angle. And go over the top. Get it down cinched really good. Then wrap down to the eye of the hook. And this is where building the head can be a bit tricky. So now I'm going to just build a black thread head to cover off the ends of all of those bits of deer hair, bucktail. And you got to spend a bit of time placing the thread wraps so that it covers up all the ends of the deer hair. That did not work real there. So it takes a fair bit of thread to do this, but that's okay because this particular fly has a pretty pronounced head, that black head. When I get all that stuff covered up, it wrapped around a little bit that time. So I just need to get in here and make sure that the yellow is pretty much on the top. Just a little tug there to kind of separate it from the red. And then we'll do a whip finish. Yeah, a little bit of glue. So if I do this right, I can, that yellow kind of wrapped around a bit. So I'm going to use my thumb and forefinger to get it back where it belongs. So there we go, that's a little better. So we get that nice red stripe in the middle of the body. And I'll get in here with my glue, and I'll cover it up pretty good with glue. So it gets in there because it needs to hold all that deer hair in. And then I'll use my bodkin just to clear the eye out of glue. The last thing I do, I've got a couple of little stragglers here. I'll use my tweezers to get in here and just pick out any of the deer hair that straggles in the wrong spot. So just a couple of pieces here I want to pull off to just let that red show through a little better. And there you go. That's the Mickey fin.
Nicely done, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah, it pays to take some time with the deer hair to try and get it stacked up evenly and to get the clump size right so that the it will overlap properly. And of course it will stay, because it's bucktail, it will slim down, but not a hell of a pile. So it will have a pretty good cross section. It won't be like it's some materials where it gets really, really skinny as you strip it. So that's the first guy. So now I can put away my tinsel and hooks and stuff, and I can put away the hair stacker. I don't need to whack the hair stacker anymore.
I guess if you wanted really slim, you could do what? Marabou, fox.
Yeah, or you could even use poly if you want, you know, I suppose. So the next fly is this guy here. And this is a Royal Coachman. And I know that our illustrious guy who wants us to give him some donations for PSF and other things has wanted my wife to do one of her scratch board flies for as a donation. I'll show you one here. So what scratch board is this stuff. And what it is, it's a white clay board that has a layer of India ink on the front. And what she does is she takes a very fine tool and scratches lines, white lines, into the India ink. She exposes the white clay underneath, and then she'll paint what she scratched. And this takes several operations, but that basically is white on black that's been painted. So he wants her to do a grizzly. Sorry, one of these guys here. So I said I'd tie a few for patterns to help her along in the tying process, or in the scratch board process. So the Royal Coachman was what he wanted, and I said, well, which kind? There's a whole raft of different varieties of Royal Coachman. But I said I'd do this one because I think this one would show up better on the scratch board. You can see, probably should have worn a different color shirt today for this one. So Royal Coachman consists of a hook, which is a 2 to 3x long wet fly hook. This is a size 10, which I used last week, actually, same hook as I used last week. Down eye, wet fly hook. The tail is this stuff, which is golden pheasant crest. So I'll get one out of this little package here. And we'll see what I can find out of this package of stuff. I actually have an entire neck from a golden pheasant in my inventory, so but I got these packages quite some time ago. So this makes a very nice looking tail. Get the right one. Look at there. There we go. There's one. Golden pheasant tippet. That's the tail. The back end of the body and the front end of the body is Peacock Herl. I'm going to get a few strands of those out. And I'm going to do them in 2 bunches of three short little Peacock Herl pieces. I'm going to have 2 bunches of them because I'm going to tie one in the front, one in the back. And that just, the number 3 seems to work pretty good for a small number of wraps, giving a Peacock Herl bump that will not come apart on you. The body is red floss, and that's the stuff here, just red Danville floss. And in just to show you, if you're a real traditionalist, you'd use this stuff, which is Pearsall silk, and I still have a little bit of this left. If I'm doing to tie a regular one, I would use this stuff. This is Pearsall's. The difference between Pearsall's and the kind of silk that you buy for this these days is this stuff retains its color when it gets wet, whereas the original red floss turns slightly brownish when it gets wet. And I have a feeling that's closer to what the original pattern was supposed to use. But I'll use the red because it catches fishermen as much as the fish. And then the wing is again going to be deer hair. This is belly hair, so it's relatively short. And that's the wing material. And then the hackle is just a simple brown hackle. The thread is black 8/0 because I don't want a lot of thread bulk on here. So this one I'm going to start at the front, and we will wrap the thread down the hook shank. And the purpose of that is to put some material on the shank so that when you're putting the Peacock Herl on and the floss on, it doesn't spin around or it doesn't slip around the slippery hook shank. And it allows it to adhere better in place. So we'll just take that material thread right to the back. And again, we're going to take this right, and I have debarbed this one. So we'll take it back to where the barb was. And we'll stop there. And we'll take a good chunk of these fibers from the golden pheasant crest. Take them off. I actually have, it's a little easier if I do them using just the tip. And I'll tie it on so that the last black mark is right at the bend of the hook. And I'll bring my thread up here, cinch it down. And when I get it there, I'll just tug on that quill a little bit to get it in exactly the right spot. Wrap up the shank of hair to make sure that that quill is done. That's him. And then I'll take my pheasant, my Peacock Herl, just line up the quills and trim off the butt ends. And I'll start just a little bit in front of the hook shank, halfway a shank, and wrap down the hook shank with the quill, the Peacock Herl, to just in front, just behind the point. Now, to make this body nice and dense, I'll hold them up, and with my thumb and forefingers, I will twist it a bit, spin it a bit. bring my thread forward, and then I will take this and wrap it around to build a bump of peacock herl. Every time I take it over the hook, I'll give it a twist. And then I'll tie it off. Front and back. Get the next batch ready. Bring my thread forward to about the halfway point on the shank. And then I'll tie in my little bits of floss. This is actually 4-strand floss. I'll just pull it back there and wrap over that floss right back to where the peacock herl is. And that will trim the loose ends. Bring my thread forward, and I want to stop about 1/3 of a shank length behind the eye because I got to get this wing in. And then I'll wrap the red body up here. And every once in a while, I got to twist this stuff to keep it from unwrapping on me, which is it's doing.
Yeah, Danville likes to do that.
Yeah, it keeps wanting to become multi-strand.
Yeah, I feel your pain.
And so every time I take a wrap over the hook. I take a couple of wraps around. And I don't want to make it too thick, but I want to have a reasonably thick body there. Now that'll work. Now I got it kind of under control. And I want the body to be about as long as the clump of peacock herl, because I need room on the shank to tie on the wing. So we'll get to there. There we have a nice bit of Danville thread on there. Trim it off. Take my peacock herl again. I don't need many strands. Like I say, 3 is probably enough to give the fuzziness that you want without having too much bulk on the hook. I'll tie that down onto the shank. And this time I'm just going to reinforce it a little bit with thread. So I'll tie it around, twist it around, and then I'll wrap it around the thread a couple of times. And then we'll just make a little bit of a peacock herl bump here, about the same diameter and not quite as wide as the back end. When we get where we want, we'll come up here and cinch that down. Trim it off. Now comes the fun part, which is the wing. I don't want a whole pile of wing. I just need enough sort of color in here, white color in here to stand out. And this is pretty short. Pretty short. You can see pretty short stuff because I don't need much of a wing. I don't need it to extend way back. So come on to the pelt, and I'll grab a bit of it by the tip. Get my scissors right down tight up against the pelt because it's really short hair. And then I'll size the clump that I need to give a half decent wing. I'll do it by the tips again, so we get my trusty comb out again and take the fuzz out. And this will actually, with this hair, it's a little less kinky, so it'll actually stack pretty good. And I get the fuzz out. And I actually have, where do I put it? Oh, where'd my stacker go? My stacker has gone AWOL. Well, I guess I'll have to use that.
It's in the drawer, Dave.
Yeah, it's around here somewhere.
To your left side.
I had it.
On your left side.
Ah, there it goes. There it is. There it is. This is a sentimentality thing. This hair stacker used to belong to Roman Cherubin. For those from Edmonton who know Roman was a great fly tyer and a good friend and a hell of a fisherman. And I managed to acquire it from his estate when he passed away.
And a real good guy.
He was a fabulous guy. I really liked Roman. I attended his funeral in the Old Orthodox Catholic Church. So there's our, see that stuff stacked up pretty nice. So I'm going to measure this again. I want the wing to go just a little bit past the bend of the hook. So I'll hold it there, do the same trimming thing at an angle. You can see it's a bit of an angle. I'll set that down on the hook shank. And this time I'm going to pinch and push with my forefinger to keep that from wrapping around the hook shank. Make sure the whole clump is sitting on top of the hook before I bind down the end. All the ends here. And make sure I've got a really good thread wraps over all of that butts of the deer hair. And make sure it's again sitting on top of the shank. And I will hold the wing up again here, and I'll get one wrap of thread in behind and then in front. And that'll make sure that keeps that wing up off the body. And the last thing we need is hackle, which I've got a pre-dug out a couple. So I'm going to pick ones that have about the right barbule length. That one looks pretty good. And I'll strip it back. And what I'm going to do, just to make sure that it adheres to the thread here where I tie it in, I'm going to measure and just about 1/8 of an inch. I will clip the barbules off on either side of the stem. What that does is that allows the thread to grab those first few little barbules so the hackle doesn't pull out when I start wrapping it. I'll stick that in there with the curve facing away from me, right down on the shank. Get it in there good and snug. And then with my hackle pliers, grab the tip and wrap, starting right in front of the wing. I will wrap hackle. And I want to make sure that all these hackle barbules stick out. So what I do is, as I wrap this, I want a really nice bushy set of hackle. I will wiggle the hackle as I go through. That keeps the stem from each wrap, trapping down barbules of the previous wrap. Yeah, I want it really good and bushy on the front here because it talk about why this is bushy flies the way it is. When I get up to the end, I will come in here and wrap off in the back and wrap off in the front. Get in here with my scissors and just get the stem, hold the hackle out of the way, and build a small black head. I got the proportions on this guy pretty good this time. And then we'll whip finish. Combo fingers today. And a teeny bit of glue that can Sally Hansen's that will penetrate in there. Make sure that none of that stuff comes undone. And clear the head with my bodkin through the eye. Now I got a pair of tweezers here because you see there's a few stragglers sticking out. So come in here with my tweezers and pull out the ones I don't want. Just break them off. And that will allow the body to show through a little better. And that's pretty good. I think that's probably good enough. And there you go. There's the Royal Coachman Trude style. And the Trude is the shape of that wing that comes back from the front. And I found, I don't know about here, but certainly when we were fishing on places like the Little Smoky and whatnot for grayling, this pattern was killer if you were fishing a pool where a stream come into the center of the pool and had a big riffle and then smoothed out, that you could cast this onto the riffle, and then just as it starts to get near the end of the riffle, you'd give it a good tug and it would sink, and the fish would come up and just hammer it. So
You're describing the bridge pool.
yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of pools on a couple of streams that are like that, and you cast it down the center, and as it got to the end of the pool, where it the rough water starts to even out. Sometimes they take it on the dry side, but quite often they would take it as soon as you pull it under, and it can be pretty exciting fishing. So I can go up here now and remove the spotlight. I think if I can get the menu. There we go.
And you can stop recording as well, Dave.
Yeah, will do.